So I have constantly said, one of the things we really have to worry in this post-Brexit UK is that we will be seeing lots and lots of rights that we used to take for granted. Not even just things like workers' rights, but things that are really simple. For example, the food safety and standards. We've taken that for granted for so long that we should have good food. But we want, time and time again, that these haven't been put into law properly yet, even though they said that they would, and that these would be somehow made better because a lot of the effort at the moment is trying to get this quote unquote fantastic trade deal with the US, which is going to absolutely put a massive steamroller all over those regulations. Because, as we said before, a lot of the big talk about doing this fantastic quote unquote trade deal with the US was the big goal of Brexit. But it's not just rights like workers' rights and standards and regulations regarding food safety and things like that that are at risk. There's a lot of other stuff at risk as well. But what about also replacing stuff we lost as well? The EU Structural Investment Fund was massively important to lots and lots of towns, especially in the north, that benefited from having access to those funds. What about this supposed UK Shared Prosperity Fund that is meant to be a flagship Tory policy, not only for the current, governing body and administration, but for Brexit itself? What does that actually mean in practice? Well, today we're going to find out. So before we do that, though, please remember to hit that like and share button. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And thank you to all those people who do support me that way. So, on with today's article. So this comes from the Yorkshire Bylines, and the title is Our Rights After Brexit and the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. It's a long time and seemingly interminable, but since the UK referendum in 2016, but with the end of the transition period on the 31st of December of 2020, the UK finally left the European Union. So what does this mean for our rights? So even though we have left the EU, we are still signatories to conventions and treaties which protect rights through membership of the Council of Europe and the ratification of international agreements. Many rights and protections are contained in the European Convention on Human Rights, or the ECHR, which still applies to the UK. Our own Human Right Acts allows individuals to use rights in the European Convention to bring cases to domestic courts. So our biggest loss of rights from Brexit is undoubtedly the loss of the EU Charter for Fundamental Rights. The Charter, which is the only piece of current EU legislation which was, quote, not cut and pasted into the retained EU law in the UK following Brexit. Unlike, say, the European Convention on Human Rights, the Charter reflects the indivisibility of civil, political, economic and social rights. Losing the Charter effectively means that there will be significant gaps in substantive rights that do not have direct equivalents in other UK human rights laws, as well as a freestanding right to non-discrimination, the right and protection of child's best interest, and the right to human dignity will also be lost. Also, from the 1st of January 2021, is the adherence to case law from the Court of Justice of the European Union. The EU Withdrawal Act in 2018 did include an amendment that the UK courts and tribunals could, quote, have regarded to its case laws, but that will no longer be statutory footing. The ECJ rulings / case law will now also be openly challenged in the UK courts, and these can help unpick the existing laws on those rights and standards if the change is found favourable. So the EU Withdrawal Act also could mean changes to equality law, After significant lobbying, a government amendment was introduced that requires a minister to make explanatory statements, including in relation to equality issues. However, this only applies to secondary legislation and does not apply to all other Brexit-related primary legislation, and this act could also reduce existing protections. The UK/EU trade deal and the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, or the TCA, threatens the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, which underpins the rights in Northern Ireland as well as the peace process. If the UK government reneges on the protocol in the agreement, the prospect of return to violence is a real threat. The TCA also seems to have resulted in the likelihood of the UK labour rights coming under threat if it leaves workers' rights and the environmental protections at serious risk of erosion because the new mechanisms agreed for safeguarding of a level playing field sets too high a bar for evidence. Any alleged breach would necessitate a protracted period of investigation and in reality would rarely be enacted or even enforced. And we already saw just at the beginning of this year how quickly they tried to get rid of workers' rights and how quickly they made a massive U-turn when we were making a massive stink about it. So you just see how important it really is to, go up against these things when they try to take them away, because if they see that there's going to be significant pushback, then they will back down on it. But the question is, will they just go for it regardless of the pushback? And at the moment, with the Tories having a massive majority, that is a significant concern. So what now? Now more than ever, when we see structural and inequality and grotesquely highlighted by the COVID-19, the current government reviews of judicial review and the Human Rights Act should solely focus on improving rights of ordinary peoples and access to them, not seeking any new restrictions. So what about the UK Shared Prosperity Fund? Because we did talk about that at the beginning. So in 2018, we were promised a continuation on the consultation on the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, or the UK SPF, which would replace the EU structural and investment funds post-Brexit. 3 years on, we are still waiting. And with a new fund due to start in April of 2022, the details have not even yet been published, and the chances of consultation are now practically non-existent. What we know so far is that this, quote, flagship policy of the levelling up agenda will be this: a UK-wide fund centrally administrated with funding decisions made by the UK government, who will need to approve local programmes. In two parts. The first one, targeting places most in need, i.e. ex-industrial areas, deprived towns, rural and coastal communities. And two, bespoke employment and skills programme for people facing barriers to the labour market. In 2019, equally, ours worked with civil society and organisations across the UK to agree shared principles of what should underpin this new fund. The points below reflect on those principles. So equality. The focus on people and places most in need is useful, but to deliver the promise of levelling up, explicit strategic objectives for equality and social inclusion should need to be hardwired into the new fund at every level, national, regional and local. And they must be given at least the same priority as attention to economic objectives. Devolution. Economic development, including EU funds, has been the responsibility of the Scottish, Welsh and Northern Ireland assemblies. Each government already has its own economic strategy, development in partnership with the civil society and businesses. The fund should also build on this strong foundation. The subsidiary. Inequality in the UK is deeply entrenched but reflects decades of deindustrialisation. But different localities and regions face different issues and opportunities. There is a limit to what a centrally driven fund can achieve. A more localised approach would enable local decision makers to target interventions where the need is greatest, building on local strengths and assets. It would also give local people and communities a chance to lead change in their areas. Civil society. The civil society organisations have a unique contributions to make to the levelling up process. Equality organisations and others have a wealth of experience in improving opportunities and outcomes for people with direct experience of discrimination and disadvantage. In some areas, they are also significant employers, such as the need for uniquely placed to understand people's needs and to ensure that the fund reaches those who need it most. It is therefore essential that they and those who work with them are involved in the design as well as the delivery of the fund programmes. This would require local knowledge and ring fencing to ensure the capacity building support and infrastructure support is available for them to do so. The UK Prosperity Fund is an opportunity to build a better fund and to make a real difference in people's lives and life changes, but the lack of engagement or consultation with civil society is a complete missed opportunity to get this right from the start. And I've said this before, I don't think there's going to be a consultation at all. I think, once again, this was just a promise thrown out. Oh, we'll consult you on what this fund's going to be. No, not even the slightest. And once again, this is a centrally administrated fund. So essentially, a council has to go to the government with a begging bowl and hope that, you know, they get some money. And even more worrying, obviously, as we've seen with Rishi Sunak's recent announcement of that levelling up fund that he announced, went to his own area, which by all accounts doesn't need it. So we could see this awful basic pork barrel politics, as it's being called, being continued under this new fund, meaning that areas that, well, don't vote Tory don't get the money. And that is not how it should be run. This is not how you should be running a democracy, by saying, if you don't get for us, well, then you don't get anything. That is not how a government should be operating at all. Full stop. This is and should be completely unacceptable to everyone, and there should be better rules in place, as was stated there, for the better allocation of how these funds should be allocated to people. But don't hold your breath, because I very much doubt that the Tories are going to be giving to, shall we say, Labour-held areas or even Labour-controlled councils at the very least. And remember, a lot of people who have suffered under austerity for well over a decade now have voted on Brexit on the principle that their vote for Brexit would somehow make their lives better. Again, I think a lot of people are in for a lot of disappointment, especially now as it seems, fingers crossed, that the coronavirus recovery is slowly, things are going to start get back to normal. And trust me, when things start to get back to normal, there's going to be a lot of other stuff that kicks off as well. So, as always, thank you for watching. Please do remember to hit that like and share button. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.